to evacuate their home planet, two inquisitive Betelgeusians, Finzo and Vohladio, traveled on an interstellar evacuation ship with their entire species for thousands of years, ultimately getting themselves excommunicated for asking too many heretical questions. After downloading their minds into freshly synthesized primate meat bodies, they were unceremoniously chucked into the nearest launch pod and blasted to Earth. Now, they reside in human bodies on their new planet, searching the human canon for worthy knowledge to send back to their overlords, and maybe make their stay here a little more bearable. These are the Betelgeusian blasphemers.
So, Finzo, have you finished reading that book?
Yeah, so we found this book, The Prophet, which was kind of a series of fables written in prose about this prophet named Al-Mustafa. So this Al-Mustafa, he comes to town over a decade ago, this little town, and the book starts when he's about to get on this ship that's finally going to take him home. And basically, as he's walking to the docks, news of his departure obviously has gotten around, and all the townsfolk have come to see him off and maybe ask him for one or two more nuggets of wisdom. These town folks basically ask him about love, marriage, children, giving, eating and drinking, work, joy and sorrow, houses, clothes, buying and selling, crime and punishment, laws, freedom, reason and passion, pain, self-knowledge, teaching, friendship, talking, time, good and evil, prayer, pleasure, beauty, religion, and death. So yeah, the whole shebang, obviously. So this prophet is essentially a vehicle for the author, Gibran's ideas on these issues.
Who's the author? What's his name?
Kahlil Gibran.
Cool. And when did you write this book?
Kahlil Gibran.
Yeah,
he wrote this in 1923. And it was originally written in Arabic and translated after that into French, I believe. Gibran takes...
Sorry, amongst the human beings, like this book is really popular, right? Like it's one of the biggest selling books of all time.
Yeah, it's been translated into a bunch of different human languages. So
like
a lot of other
languages.
100 human languages. So other humans seem to think it's pretty important. Like there's a lot of important stuff being said here. So it's pretty up there for translations, like 100 different languages, considering Harry Potter has been translated into 80 or so. So yeah,
I hear Harry Potter is really popular among the Earthlings as well. Yeah,
but I don't think it has the kind of substance that we're looking to send back to the overlords at all.
No. I don't think the overlords are going to be as impressed. They're going to be more impressed by, I think, books like this, books like The Prophet.
I agree. And do you really think we should be so blatant with our alien names there?
Oh,
Vohladio,
you're worried? Are you worried about
overlords?
Like people finding out that we are not from Earth?
Well, yeah, like humans, like listening to this and, finding out that there's two extraterrestrials among them in human meat bodies.
I mean, I guess we could be like a little bit more conspicuous about it, but I mean, we have to get these messages to the overlords. And frankly, I don't think any humans are listening to this anyway. So we're probably safe.
Yeah, no humans are going to be listening to this.
Yeah, don't worry about it, man. We're safe.
Okay.
But back to the book. I think that the fact that this book is so popular amongst the human beings actually shows that they have a real thirst for deep wisdom and timeless wisdom. Because this book was written 100 years ago and it's still popular. Like we came across it, right? And I think a lot of the stuff that it wrote about is actually probably has been written about in the past as well, in even older texts.
Yeah, like Gibran seems to take a lot of influences from Sufi mysticism, Islam in general, and the Baha'i faith, which I hadn't heard about, but it's a relatively new earth religion that emphasizes the usefulness of all religions and strives for unity among human beings. So that's where Gibran has taken a lot of his influences from.
Can you say the name of that religion again?
Baha'i. BAHA''I.
Okay, and this religion is basically like the idea that all religions are useful in some form or another?
Yeah, and that there's like some thing that it's getting at, some universal truth that each one is just a sliver of. I think I don't want to put words in the mouths of
the idea
people who
being
practice
that
the Baha'i faith, but
the idea being that all religions are attempts to reach the same fundamental truth from different angles.
maybe like all I've heard is that it emphasizes the usefulness of all religions. Maybe saying that each one is some kind of splinter of the whole is just my interpretation of what I've heard, but yeah. And I think you can see that in this book. There is a chapter on religion, and it's towards the end of the prophet, and he says, like, they're like, tell us about religion. He's like, have you not been listening? Everything I've been saying, like, take a look around you. All I've been talking about is religion.
Right. He basically says, you don't like worship sometimes and then not worship other times. Like, you don't just go to church on Sunday and worship and then you go home and not practice religion anymore. You practice religion all the time. Like, the door to your soul should be open all the time. You don't close it and open it.
Yeah,
which
I think
that was a quote I liked from that chapter.
You liked that one from the religion chapter?
I did. I liked that one.
Nice. Did you want to go through this and say, like, okay, like, for the, love chapter, did you like it or did you not like it?
Yeah, we can do that. I specifically wrote down things that popped out to me in certain chapters. Not every chapter had things that popped out to me.
Same here.
This book, I found that the style this book was written in was like one big long poem. And it was something that I found you really had to be in the mood for it to kind of like permeate you, like to really like get anything out of it. You have to be like in the mood for reading that style. So I actually read this in 3 sittings. And the first time I read it, I wasn't as into it. The second time I was really into it. So maybe like the middle chapters I really liked. And then at the end, I wasn't as into it again. But I feel like I would like to read this book again sometime when I'm like truly in the mood to appreciate it. Because I think it is like, it's written in like a very nice poetic style that you have to be in the mood to appreciate. And I think this book is probably best read in one sitting because it's not very long. It's only 60 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as I was reading it, I wrote down chapters I liked. I liked children. My favorite was actually Crime and Punishment.
Do you want to tell me about your Crime and Punishment? Because I didn't have anything. Maybe it was what I wasn't feeling that chapter when I was reading it. But this is definitely one of those books where I think you could read it over and over and over again and get something different each time.
Yeah, you for sure could. Yeah, I'll tell you what I liked about Crime and Punishment. So he kind of talked about like you can't punish somebody who doesn't feel remorseful, but if somebody's feeling remorseful, you don't need to punish them because that's like the point of punishment to begin with. I wrote a few. And then the other one was looking at the spirit of what's happening, which was actually a theme throughout the entire book, like looking beneath the surface at sort of like the interconnectedness of everything just below the surface, the yin yang of everything, but the spirit of the person who claims to be offended by a crime and the spirit of the person who you're trying to punish and the spirit of the person who's trying to punish them. So let me read a quote or two from it. And how shall you punish those whose remorse is already greater than their misdeeds? Is not remorse the justice which is administered, that the very law which you would by the very law which you would fain serve? Yet you cannot lay remorse upon the innocent, nor lift it from the heart of the guilty. So that just kind of made me think, like, if you're living in accordance with nature and you do something wrong, you're going to just become aware of what you did wrong, and then you're going to feel the remorse. So, and that is enough of a punishment in and of itself.
That's really interesting. I think maybe I didn't write anything down from this chapter because I think in the back of my mind, I was constantly thinking about psychopaths and like how they would, if they're not going to feel remorse, then maybe it's not so much that they're being punished, say like someone who feels no remorse commits some kind of crime, and then the society as a whole is like, you have done something wrong, and they're like, I don't feel like I did anything wrong, and then that person gets put in jail or executed or banished or whatever. That's more like, you know, it's not so much a punishment, but more of a practical societal level thing.
Yeah, because
I
that
feel
person
like,
doesn't feel any remorse, so they're probably just going to do it again. So that's more of like just a protecting society.
right. Whereas punishment, I think, in the sense that Gibran is saying, is like a more personal thing, where
Yeah,
the individual has to be punished, like they have to feel bad,
yeah, they have to feel
right?
bad in order to like grow from the experience of that crime and kind of like reach a point where they wouldn't do that again. And if they reach that
Right.
point, then they don't need to be punished anymore.
Exactly.
I had one
Which
other.
kind of speaks to a rehabilitation model of like, you know, jails and how we do punish, or how these humans are doing punishment, right?
Yeah, like is the point of jail and prison to punish, or is it like and get revenge, or is it to rehabilitate? Because if it's to rehabilitate, then as soon as someone's rehabilitated, like they should be done with prison. But if it's for revenge, then it's like they just have to serve this amount of time, like whether they're still pose a threat to society or not.
Yeah, I think it by the sounds of it, it's probably a bit of column A, a bit of column B.
Yeah. There's another
Yeah.
quote in this chapter that I liked as well. So this is still in Crime and Punishment. And let him
Okay.
who and let him who would lash the offender look unto the spirit of the offended. And if any of you would punish in the name of righteousness and lay the axe unto the evil tree, let him see to its roots. And verily he will find the roots of the good and the bad, the fruitful and the fruitless, all entwined together in the silent heart of the earth. So I think that's just like a mature way to look at everything. Like there's an interconnectedness to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is just like purely good or purely bad. Everybody has a little bit of both in them, and it's all kind of interconnected under the surface. So it's not as simple as just like, you know, this here's the offender, there's the offended. We're gonna like punish this person and that's it. Like it isn't a black and white thing. This book has a theme of constantly introducing like more nuance to how you see all these aspects of life. And I thought that
Mm-hmm.
quote was a good example of that.
That is a good example, going down to the roots and stuff.
Yeah.
That kind of reminds me of a Philip K. Dick story, Scanner Darkly, where this guy is so deep undercover trying to, I forget the exact plot, but he's so deep undercover that he kind of, they've got hidden cameras and he's watching himself like being recorded on these hidden cameras, and he forgets which one he is, and he starts suspecting himself
Ooh.
of being the like one who is like importing and smuggling all these drugs.
So he goes
And
so
then
undercover that he forgets he's undercover.
he goes so undercover that when he's back at the crime lab, like looking at the recordings from the house which he's trying to bust, he starts suspecting his undercover persona.
Okay.
And that whole story is about like how crime and punish, like crime and those who investigate and prosecute they need each other.
Yeah, they're
They're,
intertwined.
yeah, intertwined, like you just said.
Like that guy
um
was like literally committing crime in order to stop other people from committing crime.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you introduce more nuance and look under the surface, like you see those roots of both the good and the evil become intertwined.
Yeah, I think another passage that talks about that kind of roots and that intertwining is in the first one. I think it was the first one on love. One of the people says, "Hey, speak to us of love, Al Mustafa," and he says, "For even as love crowns you, so shall he crucify you. Even as he is for your growth, so is he for your pruning." And that kind of like makes me think like it's more of a modesty, like a moderate take on things, saying that, okay, he uses the word prune, right? So something that's pruned is to be made better or more specific, but something that's wild sort of grows with an energy, like an unstoppable energy. And like a pruned bush into a sculpture can be like beautiful and exquisite, but it loses some of its raw natural power in that process of being pruned. And then the next line talks about shaking your roots and caressing your treetops. So I think when he's talking about love here, he's saying it's this like big, great exaggerator where, you know, it's something that increases the highs, makes them the highs higher and the lows lower. And later on in that same chapter, he says, if in your fear you would seek only love's peace and love's pleasure, then it is better for you to cover your nakedness and pass out of love's threshing floor. Like love's threshing floor, like holy shit, he's saying,
yeah, like how much pain you can endure because of love in your life.
Yeah, like he's saying like love is actively beating the crap out of you. So like without going really deep and giving your entire heart to it, like and like not just doing that surface level stuff, you're not going to get those high highs, but you're also not going to get those low lows. Like you have to endure the lows to get the highs as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I agree with you there that it's a big exaggerator. And like as the roots run deeper, the branches go higher proportionally.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I think that this book, like one thing that I kind of thought while I was reading it was that the parts that stuck out to me, and maybe I think like going back and reading this in a few more years will be interesting, because the parts that stuck out to me were things that I had already sort of experienced myself, but like couldn't really put into words. Yeah. So it's like the book contains a lot of like general wisdom, but it's like, I think it's like something that start to like take form in your mind, but like not, you can't quite put it into words. Like you'll find words in this book that say like, yes, that's what it feels like. So for like a young person who's never really been in love, that might not make any sense. But if you've been through that, then you read that and you go, oh yeah, I know that. That's perfect.
Yeah. And I think that's funny that you mentioned that because what you're kind of saying is that it's a bit of a mirror. Like the book is showing you things that you've kind of thought about, but not quite put into words. It's like crystallizing it a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But he also in the book talks about, there's a whole chapter on talking. And he says, in much of your talking, thinking is half murdered. For thought is a bird of space that in a cage of words may indeed unfold its wings, but cannot fly. So that actually reminds me about the short story called Stories of Your Life by Ted Chiang.
Yeah, I've read
have you read it?
I've read that, yeah.
Where like our thoughts are these super complex and subtle and often aren't in the sequential nature that words are. So as soon as you start to condense something into the sequential nature needed to express it with words, you do lose something, some kind of subtlety. But then you have a poet like Gibran who can like get closer to the actual feeling, the actual thoughts.
Yeah, he uses words that limit as little as possible and maintain the essence as much as possible.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good poetry. Yeah, poetry has a way of like painting feelings that like visual art can't really do.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, what were you saying? No, I just brought in talking, but what were you talking about?
Well, I think we were just kind of mentioning like the chapters we liked. What did you think of like the book overall? So like I wrote down a couple things that I thought were themes like of the entire book.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote like one of the themes is like looking at the spirit of all things, not just the surface. Like I said, the interconnectedness of all things, yin yang, how you often need like two opposites to define each other, and that they're connected under the surface. Always looking at more nuance and less black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Finding the nuance in all things. Yeah, what did you think? Like, how would you describe the book, like overall? Like if there was like a common thread that runs through all the chapters.
Yeah, I think a common thread for me was kind of this idea that if you're doing something with intention and you're just, well, there was a chapter on freedom, which I think put it really well, where they're saying, okay, so he says, if you're seeking freedom, that becomes a harness to you. Like
Yeah,
if
you
freedom
can't be
is
free
something
until
to
you
be
stop seeking
obtained,
it.
exactly. You have to stop striving for freedom to be truly free. And I think that is kind of reminds me of this sort of like, I think they call it the way or like the Tao. And I'm not sure. I don't know much about it. Maybe we could check out this book. I hear it's another short one where it's kind of like everything just is like there's this flow where if you think about things too much, you can get out of this flow. But if you just find this like right middle way, things are better.
Yeah.
But that's kind of vague. I think that's the thing is it's like a vague middle thing, like like there is no spiritual other world. There is no like otherness. Like everything is natural and that's where everything is. And like
So
once you
just surrendering to nature is actually the thing that keeps you on the path. And
yes,
when you try to nitpick too much, it's almost like you're trying to be unnatural or you're trying to transcend above nature, but you're nested within it. And so that's when you start running into problems and constantly feeling frustrated.
yeah,
But when you just
yeah,
surrender to nature, it's like you just flow down the river. And that's where you belong. And everything you do is there natural because you're part of nature.
yeah. And I think I'm also trying to get at this sort of um moderateness in the book where they talk like he talks about a lot of high-minded things and then sort of brings it back to the ground and says like it's somewhere in between these two extreme points where you actually want to be like living your life. For like in the reason and passion chapter, he talks about how reason and your passion are the rudder and the sails of your seafaring soul.
Yeah. And
So
if you're missing either one, you can't go anywhere.
exactly.
I
Where
love
I
that
think
analogy.
I love that analogy. I think that's great. Yeah, you're either tossed adrift or you're at a standstill in mid seas if you've got one but not the other.
Yeah, so
And
emotion and feeling is like your drive, and then thinking and reasoning is like the rudder of the ship that can steer you in the right direction.
exactly. And I think that a lot of these chapters are kind of getting at that vague idea I'm trying to express. That
So
there's
living,
like,
it's like that, like most things have two extremes, like two poles, and like you just need both of them all the time. Like maybe that's the interconnectedness of all things.
yeah, yeah,
You
that's
need
a
to
good way to
exist
put it.
between two poles, like in a state of, there needs to be a polarity between two extremes, and you don't occupy either of those extremes ever.
No, and if you think that, one is better than say like, one is bad, one is good and one is bad, if you
Yeah.
just try and do the all good all the time, it's not going to work out for you.
You end up like maiming yourself. Like
Yeah.
if you just like never think and you just constantly run on emotions 24/7, you'll be like spinning around in circles. But if you all you do is think and reason, then you won't get anywhere because you'll have no wind in your sails like pushing you somewhere.
Exactly.
I like that one.
I like that one a lot. Um, yeah, and it's just like there's a groundedness to everything that's being said that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
A high-minded groundedness, I guess.
That sort of reminds me of something that I read in the chapter on giving. And I'll try to explain why. So in the chapter of giving, it says that like the reward for giving is joy. And when you give of things, like you need to give of yourself rather than give of things. but we have kind of like a fear of losing our things. Like
Mhm.
what holds us back from giving more is like a fear of losing things. But the fear of thirst is the unquenchable thirst. So it's like, what am I trying to say here?
Like the fear of the thing that you're afraid of makes it bad.
Yeah.
Like being afraid of being hungry will make you eat more when you're not hungry, which will make you constantly be afraid of not eating, kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of.
That's a subtle point that I'm not quite sharpening into. That's where like I'm
It's
half
like there's
murdering
nothing,
my own thoughts.
it's like there's nothing to fear but fear itself.
Mm,
Like you're constantly like if you're afraid of being thirsty, you're constantly drinking so that you're not thirsty anymore. But the real thirst is the fear of being thirsty. Like you're trying to you're trying to, if you go like one meta layer beneath that, the thirst is being afraid of being thirsty, and that can never be
mhm.
quenched
Right.
by drinking
See,
more water.
by drinking more water. It can be quenched by just being like, oh, I'm thirsty now. That's probably something I should deal with, but not be like super afraid of it.
It can be quenched by no longer being afraid of the inevitable being thirsty, just accepting it.
That sounds like the Buddhist concept of equanimity, like just being like, yeah, I'm thirsty, but everyone gets thirsty. I'm thirsty now, and I won't be thirsty later.
Yeah, actually, there was something that I think Jesus says something about this in the New Testament. Um, like you can drink as much water as you want, and it will like never always quench your thirst, but only my water, only the water of life will ultimately quench your thirst, which is
Hmm.
like finding something that transcends um like the surface level stuff
Yeah.
in order to like so that you don't have to worry about the surface level stuff anymore, or you just accept it as inevitable, but I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Oh, I know. I think I know what you're trying to say. I think we're touching on a very subtle point here, and that the book is making throughout, where the surface level stuff is fine and dandy as long as you don't go craving the surface level stuff so much that it impacts the deeper level stuff.
I think so, sure.
Maybe. But that's the thing too, is like I know I'm going to read this book again,
Yeah,
and maybe next time I'll be able to put it into better words.
maybe. I think like when you live more life, this book will find a new way of speaking to you.
Yeah.
I think when you were talking about love and like how it makes the extremes higher and lower, it for some reason reminded me of that. Like fear of thirst is the unquenchable thirst. I'm not sure why.
Hmm. I think he says, if in your fear you would only seek love, peace, and love's pleasure, then it is better that you cover your nakedness and pass out of love's threshing floor into the seasonless world, where you shall laugh, but not all of your laughter, and weep, but not all of your tears. Is that related? Or is that
Maybe,
just a bunch of words?
maybe, man. I don't know.
I think we've tied ourselves up in loops here.
Okay, let's move on to another part. Um, I liked
These humans, man.
yeah, I know. I liked the chapter on friendship. Um, and what I got from it was that like you appreciate your friends more kind of like when they leave, because then you can see clearly like the role they play in your life.
Mm,
Kind of like how you can see a mountain more clearly from the valley beside it.
right. That's interesting. That sounds very much like what I had pulled out from the chapter on marriage, where for the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow. Which I just took to be as like, don't be codependent. Like, give each other space to grow.
Yeah.
And if you're like, it's like a closeness. Closeness is not necessarily a good
Advantageous.
thing. Yeah. Advantageous. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you get too close, you actually stifle. So like the thing that's like improving your life, like you have to like give it space, like almost like you can't cling to it or you lose it.
Right. It's like overwatering a plant.
Right.
You know, you're just like, I want to give you like love and sunshine. Like you put this plant in the sun and feed it water when it's supposed to be in the shade and get watered like once a month. And like you kill it. But I think what both of those are saying is just another instance of that sort of that moderate approach that I was seeing throughout the book.
Yeah, the moderate approach where it's like good things in your life, like in order to appreciate the good things in your life, you can't let them become a master. He also says it in the chapter on houses. He's like, if you fill your house with comfort, you'll eventually depend on comfort, and comfort will be a master. Like lust for comfort will become your master.
Yeah.
Which is probably like clinging too closely to your friends or clinging too closely to your wife. Eventually that just becomes your master, and like it stops serving you.
Yeah. I liked that chapter. I thought that the houses chapter was, but like that was kind of a strange thought. He's like, yo, people of Orphalese, like, what do you have in your houses? A bunch of comfy stuff? Well, like, let me tell you, comfort and the lust for comfort murders the passion of the soul, and then walks grinning at the funeral. Like, if you have just like, your house should not be seen as an anchor, but a mast, I think is what he says.
Right.
Like,
it should be filled with beautiful things, not comfortable things.
Yes. Which I think is kind of interesting. If you look at what I would say, like most people's, I don't know. I don't really know what most people's houses look like.
I haven't been inside very many houses.
I have not been inside very many houses, to be honest.
We can only speculate what human beings keep inside their houses.
We just from what I see on TV, really.
Right.
And I get the feeling that's a very small sample size of what's actually.
Like, it might not even be real. They might be showing you something that isn't even real on TV.
Are you telling me what I see on TV might not be real?
I mean, like if you were making TV shows for the human beings, like would you show stuff as they really are, or would you like change a little bit to like make it look how you wanted it to look?
I guess I'd make it how I want it to look.
Yeah, I'm saying that we probably shouldn't trust what Earthlings put on TV.
Okay, I'm good. Definitely gonna reevaluate my previous feelings. Okay, yeah, but like I think the idea that like your house, like you can get soft, I think is what that was telling me.
Right. Yeah, anything that you cling to too hard will eventually make you dependent on it and make you weaker and soft. So if it stops being a mast and it starts being an anchor, then you need to separate yourself from it. Mm-hmm. And that goes for more than houses.
Yeah. You know what? I think I just had a thought. Like kind of what we're taught, what this entire book is like how to calibrate your life to like find that nice middle. Like you don't want it too far to one side, too far to the other. And I think when he talks about the religion chapter and says like, you know, this is what I'm talking about is how to achieve that like perfect middle spot in between everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm thinking of like some kind of dial where like if it's too far this way, or like more like a circular dial where it can go up, down, left, right, and you want it right in the center.
Yeah. But then there's like all these dimensions to life, which are really just one dimension. It's just life itself. But you have to be in the middle of all of those dimensions. So like your approach to love, friendship, money, crime and punishment, reason, passion, houses, possessions, your approach to everything needs to be moderate, because you'll be skewed if you go to an extreme in any of those areas.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds hard.
And it often comes back to like what's inside of you. So on the freedom chapter, I bookmarked something on the freedom chapter. And it's all about like, the chapter was sort of like you said before, seeking freedom will make you not free. Like that's the paradox. Like if you're seeking freedom, you're by definition not free. So by no longer seeking the freedom, you become free because you don't need anything anymore. It's kind of like, I think that's kind of like the fundamental paradox of spirituality, where if you're seeking enlightenment, you're not actually enlightened. So the more you try to become enlightened, the less enlightened you are. But there was something I highlighted in this chapter. And if it is a despot you would dethrone, see first that his throne erected within you is destroyed. For how can a tyrant rule the free and the proud, but for a tyranny in their own freedom and a shame in their own pride? So freedom starts from within you. Like if you're letting like limitations like into yourself and into your heart, you're not free.
I see. So you're saying freedom, you can't be conquered unless you let yourself be conquered?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. But yeah, I like when you touched on the Enlightenment thing, because it definitely has the same, because I see a lot of, if you ever scroll like meditation subreddits or something, or forums online, often people are like saying, okay, I like really want to get good at meditating, or like I want to become enlightened. And then usually there's someone in the comments that's like, that's going to be your biggest hurdle, you know?
You want to, like, the desire to become is making you not.
Yeah.
By definition means that you're not already.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So how would you, like, if a person if a person did want to become enlightened, like, what should they do? Like, if a person did want to learn to meditate, like, what should they do? It's almost like you have to start from that point, like, to get some momentum going, and then maybe you get realizations along the way. And then ultimately when you arrive at the destination, you realize that you were there the whole time, or you could have been there the whole time.
Yeah. There's like a famous Zen saying, I think, where it's like, before enlightenment, you chop wood and gather water. And after enlightenment, you chop wood and gather water.
Yeah, you still live the same, but your perspective is different.
Like, I guess it'd be like, before, maybe, like, I've always taken that to be something like, before enlightenment, it's like, shit, I gotta go gather water. Like, I don't want to. And then you go do it. And it's like, now I gotta chop wood. It's like, and you go do it. And then afterwards, you are just doing the thing.
Yeah, like the resistance within yourself is gone. And that actually makes you free.
Yes. No matter what you're doing.
Yeah. But that kind of sounds like a person is just like letting themselves be conquered and like just taking it. Like you're just like not fighting back anymore.
But maybe that's the thing. Like, I think there's other. So what that just reminds me of is another quote I remember hearing about like anger, and how if you're holding on to it, it hurts you more than if you just like let it go, like an ember in your hand.
Yeah, anger is an ember that you could like pass from person to person, because you like can take it out on somebody else and then they're angry. But to be the one to hold on to the ember and like let it diffuse is like the only way. I don't know. What were you gonna say?
Kind of the same. Like, if you're angry and like you're really hanging on to it, it's like holding a coal in your hand and squeezing. Versus if you're like angry and you're just like, I'm just angry, I'm gonna let go, and you just like open your hand, it just burns a little. So the idea is like, the more you're like holding on to things, the more you're going to suffer.
So the desire for vindication is actually your master.
Yeah.
like the need, like you can't let go of that cold because you're like, no, I'm right and they're wrong and I need to be vindicated. But that
Mhm.
ends up being the thing that punishes you. Whereas if you can just kind of like get over things or let go of it, then nothing can hurt you anymore.
Yeah. And I think like the idea that like you know this guy who's chopping wood and carrying water is just like given up, like it kind of might seem like that from the outside, but he could be just completely content in what he's doing. And just because like, you know, he's chopping wood or gathering water or making a startup in Silicon Valley doesn't mean that he's controlled by that want or determined by it. Like, you know, someone in Silicon Valley making a startup could be like, I really have to like hustle and like do this stuff, and it's like killing them slowly. And then you've got someone who's like, yeah, you know, I'm going to try this thing. I'm just going to see if it goes. And if it goes, it goes. And if it doesn't go, it doesn't go. But I really want it. Like, I would like for it to go. But if it doesn't go, I'm also fine with that. And I'll just like redirect.
Yeah, their happiness isn't dependent on the outcome. So they're free
Yes,
from the outcome.
they are free from the outcome. The only thing you can control is the process,
Right. So I think this
right?
is like a not worrying about things you can't control, because like you you can't control the fact that you need to chop wood and gather water. So getting angry at that is just wasted effort.
Hmm.
Like you might as well just accept you have to chop wood and gather water because you can't control that. So if you don't get angry at that, then you're free to care about things that actually matter or things that you can control.
Yeah, like maybe if you're like chopping wood and the whole time you're like, this sucks, this sucks. I hate doing this. This sucks. Like you might actually not notice that it's like a beautiful sunny day and you're beside a bubbling brook and there's like birds tweeting all around you,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and it doesn't
Like you
necessarily mean that you've like been conquered or that you've given up. It just means that you're kind of like being realistic about your
yeah,
situation.
yes. Yeah, and I think that's kind of going to this like the way thing I was talking about.
Hmm.
You know, you're just flowing with stuff and not trying to change the flow.
So it's like, okay, so there's something subtle there. So it's like enlightenment is when you no longer try. Enlightenment is like when you aren't trying to change the flow anymore, when you can accept the flow but not feel like you've been conquered.
Yeah, like just because like you accept like thing like if just because like you accept the circumstances that you have doesn't mean you can't try and change them for the better.
Right.
But like I think that's the hard balancing point is like we definitely see these humans like really giving her and like really wanting to change their situation.
Yeah.
That's noble in a way, but it also causes them a lot of suffering.
Right. So continuing to work to improve it, but then like finding a way to be happy without needing things to change is actually what can set you free. Like being realistic about what you have to do and like really making an effort to improve things. But then like if things don't actually change, you're still happy because that's within your control, because you can control your perspective. Like having the perspective to appreciate and be thankful for what you have, whether it changes or not, but then still trying to change it.
Yeah, it's kind of sounds like being in a hot air balloon. Like you can do all this effort to get yourself up in the air and like calculate as best as possible like where the wind's going to take you, and that's it. Like you can do your best, but
Mhm.
you might be landing somewhere you're not exactly trying to get to.
Yeah. And then sort of like being able to lift your feet up out of the mud and flow down the river without fear,
Yep.
um, relieves a lot of stress.
Yeah.
Yeah. and maybe that's what enlightenment is, like being able to just do that, like, and like accept, like relinquish that control.
Yeah, just like completely relinquish all control that you think you have.
Did you want to say anything else about the book? Any other
No.
chapters that you really liked?
Nope. I think we covered everything. We talked about everything. I really liked the first chapter on love. Call me a romantic. Yeah, I think that was great. But what do you think? Do you think we should recommend this to the overlords, or do you think we should keep this one to ourselves?
I would recommend this one to the overlords.
Okay, I am in agreement. We should definitely recommend this one to the overlords.
Yeah, I think this one actually sums up like probably centuries or millennia of human knowledge and human wisdom, like spiritual wisdom, into one short book. So I think it's a good example of the depth that these humans can reach.
Yeah, with some serious economy of words.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're new to reading, so we need words to be minimized. We need short books.
Yeah. Reading, like, not just brain to brain communication is a lot of tedious.
Yeah, it really slows down the process.
Really slows down the process. But I mean, I can keep secrets now.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, that's the Prophet. Definitely a good example to send to the overlords.
Okay. Well, okay, it was good talking to you, Finzo.
Good talking to you, Vohladio.
And we'll check in again when we find a new book to read and talk about.
We should. Another short one.
Yeah, another short one for sure.
Okay. See you next week.
If you humans have any questions, comments, complaints, or recommendations for future things to send back to the overlords, please send us an email at betelgeusianblasphemers@gmail.com. And thank you for listening.